Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right. Welcome to the Eagle's Nest podcast. I'm Nathan. Obviously, we've met. But go ahead and give a little introduction about yourself.
My name is Brian Conine. I'm 33 years old, student veteran over here at FGCU, and I'm
Awesome.
in the PGM program.
Awesome. So let's talk about your service. So where did you serve in? What branch?
I was in the Army from 2009 to 2013.
Oh, very nice. So what did you do in the military?
I was a combat engineer, so we
very cool.
dealt mainly with explosives and
Just
and,
general stuff like that?
Yeah, UXOs and IEDs when I was in Iraq, and that was mainly the main focus of our training.
Gotcha. So what got you, what was like the reason why you joined the military?
High school, just kind of really wasn't sure what to do after high school. I did a semester in college and it just wasn't for me, and the next best thing was, join the Army. I lived a couple miles from the recruiter's office and just walked in one day and said, "Hey, what do you got?" And it was a wrap from there.
Easy peasy, just like that?
Just like that, man.
All right. Yeah. So where were you living at the time when you joined?
In Margaretville, New York, upstate in the Catskills.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
So how was, the process of, joining the military to becoming a combat engineer?
Yeah, back then it was in 2008, 2009. It was a lot easier probably than it is now. We needed people then, and there was just you had to pass the physical fitness test and make sure they weren't like crazy or nothing.
Yeah.
And I think a few just tests, but for the most part, I remember it was pretty much a breeze.
Yeah.
To get in.
Well,
maybe for me, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's different for everybody. I like to, this podcast is for, getting the story of every veteran that I meet and, hearing, every process that they had to go through just to kind of see, how kind of get a general idea of how the process is,
Yeah, like getting in was, the easy part. And, it was kind of like at that time, it was like a very obvious, like, telltale if you're able to get in. Obviously, if, I'm 5'7", if I'm, like, over 200 pounds, I really know you can't do it. But I was younger, I was in shape, and, you pass the physical fitness test and do a couple other exams, and you're good.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get to basic, then, the real work begins.
Of course.
It's, I did 16 weeks in basic, and then you do like your AIT training, and that's just focus on what your job is.
Yeah.
So I spent a long time over in Fort Leonard Wood, and then it was just like skill set training.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
From there, and then I got stationed over in Hawaii, so I was there for a while.
Very nice.
Yeah.
How long were you in Hawaii for?
When was it? It was I guess altogether it was 3 years. I was stationed there for 4. I was a year in Iraq.
Oh, very nice.
Time, but
how was your deployment over in Iraq?
During the time, obviously, I think it was a little rough. It was 2010 to 2011, and I was a young guy then. I turned 21 in Iraq, and it wasn't easy then. But obviously, looking back at it now, I was like, yeah, I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Of course.
But I guess during the time, man, it really just like that era in my life was more of a kind of a growth development.
Definitely.
And I guess I didn't really appreciate at the time then all the stuff that I was like going through, and you really learn a lot about yourself, but you don't learn about it then. You learn about it like later on.
Of course, always. It's always like that. Did you have any other family in the military?
My brother did a couple years in the Army, but when he joined, he's 8 years older than me, so when he joined and got out before I even got out of high school. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, he was already done. But I know my mother and my father, no one ever did. So.
What did your brother do in the military?
Similar job. He did more like construction.
Okay.
It was like building bridges and everything, but similar kind of. It was like the same niche in the Army.
Very nice. So, as a combat engineer, you were handling explosives. Were you just dealing with detonating explosives and stuff like that?
No, so like when you're not deployed, there's like a wide range of it.
Yeah.
You know, for the most part, you're just like an explosives or demolition handler.
Okay.
And when we were in Iraq, you know, we were doing what's called route clearance. So we cleared the routes of, you know, any IEDs, any caches, any threats that for convoys. So like civilian convoys that were coming through, other troops that were coming through in large numbers, they needed to make sure that the route was clear, that they're going through. And so it was a time task that they were going to be through that area around this time. So half hour before, or 20 minutes to a half hour before, we needed to make sure that that was clear for them to go through.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very, obviously it was very important.
Yeah.
And you know, we cleared the route, you know, of anything that would have happened to civilians or anyone else.
Was there any time where you had like complications clearing out the roads, like
Yeah.
somebody coming in trying to stop you, or just any other complications like that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was, you know, yeah, countless times. It was a lot of issues for a good few months there. It was, you know, sometimes it was an easy dealing with, but other times it was not, and you know, it was like something that should have been only 4 hours turned out to be like 16 hours. You know,
Yeah.
and
What kind of like situations would happen?
Well, you know, for the most part, you know, IEDs would go off. You know, and you know, engage in a couple firefights. Nothing too drastic. You know, my unit was very fortunate where not too much happened in that sense where anyone got hurt.
Of course.
But we did have a few moments. I would say the biggest, most common one that we had to deal with was dead animals on the side of the road.
Mm.
They're so we use like a lot of heat signature cameras, you know, because explosives underground come up as heat signatures. So like if you would see like a dead camel on the side of the road, there would still be, depending on, you know, the sun's hitting it, there would still be some sort of heat in there. So if you're just using the white hot, black hot camera that's reading heat signatures, like the dead camel is still going to produce some sort of heat signature. And so at times it was really hard to tell. And so that's like where they would put it right on the side of the road. And we would have to, you know, a few times they did go off. Other times, you know, we'd have to, you know, send out the robots or send out a group of guys to go check it out. And but dead animals was probably our biggest like problem to deal with. And then yeah, it was like going through the villages, less crowds of people all on the side of the streets. You know, it was a lot of things that you couldn't do either.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like when the war first started where you could just, you know, anybody got close, you pop them off. You know, but no, then it was like when I was there, it was like, you know, we had ROEs, we had a lot of SOPs that we had to follow, and so it made it a lot harder, obviously. But you know, it's for the better of everyone else.
Yeah. How did the locals like treat you guys at that time?
For the most part, yeah, I don't really remember any bad. There's a few moments where like, you know, you could just tell that they were not like friendlies, but the kids loved us. You know, every time we came through a certain neighborhood, you know, we threw out food and drinks to the little kids. You know, it was very most of the areas we were at were very poor, you know, obviously. So, you know, just giving a kid a Gatorade bottle was like, you know, giving him $1 million.
Yeah.
You know? And for the most part, they were very supportive, and obviously there's the few that weren't, but you know, I would say 95% of the people we came across were in support of us being there.
Huh.
So,
very cool.
Yeah.
So, when was your first time you kind of experienced like a gunfight when you were out clearing stuff? Like, how was that? How was that experience for you?
Yeah, for the most part, in the beginning, you know, you just shit your pants. I don't know if I want to say it on here, but
Nah, we'll edit in post.
But yeah, no, it's like initial moment. Obviously, you know, it doesn't last. None of the times we're involved in anything, it never lasted as long as you'd like ideally think. Like you watch the movies, it's like an hour of like shooting back. It's not like that. In most part, it was like you get somebody who hiding behind a wall and they just go like that and they'd hide and then they'd run away, you know. So
that must be freaky. Like not even being able to he just disappears.
Yeah, and that's where the the cameras came in big time because we could like see it if we did night missions and everyone could see that. But it was still, you know, crowds of people around. And that's why they would do IEDs a lot because they could be from long distances away and set it off.
Yeah.
For me, though, the first one was actually Super Bowl Sunday.
Really?
Over there, yeah. It was like, you remember that just because it's Super Bowl Sunday. We were on a mission, and a round went off and to our last vehicle. And I'm in, like, the second vehicle, and it just heard a few hit the window. And looked over, and we saw just too many people. We couldn't really engage in nothing, but it was like for a second you're like shit.
Yeah.
And you just see the marks. Luckily, you know, we have like thick plated glass.
Yeah.
So, you know, a few rounds from an AK is not going to do anything to the vehicles we're in. But still, in that moment, you're like, this is it.
So that was your first time kind of getting engaged?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was almost like an exhibit. Like you're sitting inside and seeing all the craziness about to happen.
Yeah, there's a few times where, you know, when we're in armored vehicles, you know, you're just like thankful. It's like,
yeah,
and that. But then when you're in the gunner's hatch, then it's like, you know, all right, well,
a little bit open.
More, yeah, careful. But yeah, so the Super Bowl Sunday was definitely the first one that I officially like remember. There was a few other ones from there, but the initially, you know, you're never like prepared for it. You don't see it coming, and then that's like when you're like, oh, you know.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about that? What's one kind of story that you remember where shit just kind of hit the fan?
It would be so we going down this route. It's called Route Tampa,
Okay.
And we're in Tikrit, Iraq. Just between they had the old barriers. They're just like big old huge bags of like you fill them up with sand in their barriers.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a few local nationals in the area, and our LT, he gets out with the Terp and a few others for security, and they talk to a couple local nationals, and then you just hear the rounds go off from back, and I didn't hear it at the time over the radio chat. Hey, I got fire from my 6, and then we immediately go and was cordon off the area, so we just get in a big circle there. And it didn't last long, but we had a RPG fly across one of the vehicles. Didn't hit him, but did miss him. And then just kind of really, it lasted probably like 15, 20 seconds, but it was to the point where a bunch of people had to get out and, you know, cordon off the area, and it really happened so fast, but probably about 100 rounds went off in a matter of like 20 seconds.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it's just like it
just went sideways.
Yeah, and that's where like I think a lot of people like get it mixed up, but like it's a kind of messes with it because it's like in 20 seconds. 20 seconds is just from, you know, a 10-second walk or a 10-foot walk. You know? And, you know, 100 rounds went off, and luckily no one was hurt, but, you know, we did end up getting a few guys, and we detained them. And that was just probably the most serious one. A few other ones were a little bit from there, and then we had some other issues, but that was more on the inside our post. You know, we took indirect fire almost like every day. You know, people just shooting mortars out there.
Okay.
But that was a little bit more in depth on the whole base or the whole post that we were at. On mission, though, that would be probably the biggest one.
Gotcha. Well, so, you know, looking back on your service, what do you think is one thing that, you know, you kind of hold on to the most?
Yeah, I mean, well, pride's one for sure. Definitely, you know, the best group of friends I've ever met in my life, and I know everyone says that, but it's like, you know, you're in a position where, you know, everybody's, you know, in the same shit you are.
Yeah.
Everybody's dealing with the same stuff. Nobody's different. And then, you know, they call it the brotherhood for sure. but definitely, I mean, still some of the best friends I have today. We still stay in touch.
Oh yeah.
And it's, I never experienced any, like, no one experienced any racism or anything like that, any sort of animosity towards one another. It was really just a close niche of people. And I'm sure there was some instances where some people were, but they were like, they didn't last long at all, so you didn't even like notice them at all. The one thing I would take from that is, I mean, the best group of friends I've ever had, and the learning experience, like the growth and everything. I am who I am because of that now.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So it's cool that you're able to get a band of brothers and all of that, and I'm glad that there wasn't a lot of complications or stuff that was going on inside the base, because I've heard a lot of stories of family who were in the military, sexual harassment, stuff like that, abuse. What would you say about all of that?
Yeah, I mean the between soldiers, I mean, you heard about not deployed shit. When I was stationed in Hawaii, I heard about someone getting raped every day. And surprisingly, in the weirdest way, it's ironic, but it wasn't a good amount of it. Wasn't from dudes. It was from like lesbian women. They were in my barracks. There was probably like 3 or 4 like lesbian chicks that got in trouble for drugging girls. And
wow.
Yeah, I mean it's like, but I mean like that's what I was talking about from the beginning. Like those people, you hear about it, but they're like not there long enough.
Yeah, you don't really see it.
Yeah, I mean you hear about it. I would say, yeah, sexual harassment all the time, especially now because like the way strict it is. When I was in, you can joke around with a friend who was a girl, and it was cool. It was like as long as you're joking around and she you knew your limits.
Yeah,
I mean, now
of course.
My buddies who are still in, it's like you don't even dare like joke around at all because like if the wrong person hears it, it doesn't even matter. So it's very like it's different, and I
agree.
Think so people who are used to one thing, even if you're just a jokester, you got to really watch your tongue. But when I was in, it was a lot of people. There was a lot of rape, and it was like kind of sad. And,
it's unfortunate, yeah.
Yeah, I know they've been working on it now, and it's some people may not agree with the system that there is now, where you can't even joke around, but at the same time, look at what we've had to deal with.
Yeah. So, only solution at this point, if it's working, or if it's helping,
Yeah, exactly. No, and it's like there doesn't need to be all this situation, all this shit going on.
Yeah.
Then, I would say the big thing though, when I got back from Iraq, and it wasn't even just from my deployment, was where the majority of like people I knew that died was suicide. It was God, I'd probably say that whole 22 veterans a day thing was very accurate for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Now I haven't really heard much about it, but there was a time where I knew someone who died, or committed to suicide at least like once every like 6 months.
Wow.
But
now, how was your transition out of the military?
Oh, so after I got out of the Army, I went to my ex. She was stationed at Hanscom Air Force Base, so we went over there. So I guess I still had that military life, I guess, there.
Yeah.
But when we split up, I did contracting work for the Army afterwards. So I did that. Same thing I did in Iraq, I did as a civilian here in the States.
Oh.
And I did that for a while. So I guess I never really kind of got out. And then, but after that, it did take a while. Just, just a adjustment, there was a lot of people just, I'm not really too sure how to explain it, to be honest with you, but in the beginning, it was very tough. It was very different because I felt like I was always going to be in like trouble because I wasn't there. I'll tell you, a lot of people were like, like, shit, I'm going to get a phone call, but hey, they're in trouble. Because, I mean, I spent 4.5, almost 5 years just, like,
being used to that.
Yeah, telling somebody where I was 24/7.
Yeah.
You know? And, you know, if you were, like, a minute late, you had 30 people calling you. So it was, like, a good few months afterwards where you're just, like, staring at the phone, and you're like, it's not going to go off, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, once you get past that, it's, you know, then you slowly transition into, like, real world, and then the problem is that everybody comes out of the Army or the military with this plan that they're going to be, like, rich and successful, and they figure life out, and it's just like you kind of go back to square one where you're 18, fresh out of high school.
Yeah.
You know,
That's what I heard. I interviewed this guy Larry the other day, and you know, he was telling me his story, and you know, he kind of ended up back in the same place, like full circle. So but now you're in the civilian world, and everyone else is already doing their thing, and you're back at square one.
Yeah, and that's where, like, a lot of my friends too, they've had issues because they feel like, you know, they get out at like 24, get out of the Army at like 24, and they go to college, and then they're like thinking, well, shit, man, I'm getting my bachelor's degree I'm going to get at 28, I'm going to be so far behind, and then they just get in this, like, downward, like, not even just depression, but, like, negative thought process.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was the same way. You know, that's why I'm 33, you know, and still in school because, you know, I went to school for a little bit. I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And then, you know, I've found, I was given that opportunity to find my passions and call it work. And then I've been working in the golf industry for a long time now. And then, you know, I finally have them to be able to pay for the degree, and I'm confident in what I want to do. So it takes a while, but I think for the most part, the transition problem that a lot of veterans have is that they're in a rush and they're trying to get it done. They're trying to get everything figured out ASAP and not realizing that there's a process to things. You know?
Definitely, yeah. And, you know, going back to your point on, you know, veterans finding it difficult to go back and get a degree, you know, I definitely agree with you. You know, it's hard kind of coming back into a scene where it's mostly just young people.
No.
And you already, you know, kind of did a thing. Like my dad, I mean, he did 20 years in the Army, and then he got his degree, and he was able to get his degree before my brother, he was able to get his degree, like literally like a year before. And so I thought that was really funny. But yeah, you know, I do think that veterans, if that's what they want to do, go and continue to get a degree to pursue a career like that. I 100% believe that should be something that they should do. And also going back to your point on, you know, you kind of waiting for the phone call to kind of go off. Yeah, you know, it's really difficult, I feel like, for veterans to transition out because you were living with such a tight-knit group and community where everyone was relied upon. They all had, you know, everyone needed to be there. And so when you weren't there, 30 people were calling like, yo, we need you here. Yeah. And so not having that when you transition out of the military is very difficult for people to, you know, kind of handle. So, you know, during your transition, what was kind of like your support to help you kind of get adjusted?
You know, I think that was where it was like the hardest for me because I didn't really feel like I had much help. Mm-hmm. You know, and you get these like programs and companies that, you know, they say they're there for you, and but you still just never feel it. And I don't know if that's just like a pride thing or what, but you just feel like you're, you know, against the world. And I think that's what really makes it difficult. But the support, I mean, obviously, you know, Troy, I've been to a couple different colleges only for a little bit after the Army. And Troy, with the Veterans Program, he's been doing like a phenomenal job of just getting everybody inclusive.
Yeah.
You know, he finds out everyone's like degrees and fields that they're interested in, and he just gets you involved somehow.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of a nice little group.
Yeah. He's doing great things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously your family's there, but I don't think that most of them never really truly understand.
Exactly. It's being able to be understood, and there's no one better who understands veterans than veterans.
Exactly.
So I completely understand. My father, I feel like he definitely could have had a lot more support, for sure, because he had a very difficult time, transitioning out of the military, and complications with the VA, stuff like that. It's hard, having to deal with all that stuff and still think that there's still people out there to support you.
Absolutely, and that as another thing too is like the VA, for the most part, I've never had an issue up until when I first got out. There was maybe a few months of just the VA was a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And then now, these last 6 years, they've really done a huge flip flop.
Yeah.
Kind of right around to be honest with you, 2016, in that era, a couple years after I got out, you just noticed that the VA was just on a whole better route. Now, I have an app. I contact my primary care doctor through the app. If I'm not feeling good, they do telehealth. They get a FaceTime.
Oh, that's really cool.
They get it on the phone. Hey, what's wrong? Hey, this, and that. Oh, no worries. Hey, I'm emailing you a work note. You're going to take the next couple of days off. I'm sending you some medicine or some antibiotics in the mail. It'll be at your door in 2 days.
Wow.
So it's very well organized now. And I think they, the thing that I noticed was, maybe it's just Florida. I'm not sure, but when I got out, I went back home to New York, and that VA just felt like the people you dealt with was just it was another job.
Yeah.
It was a job. And then out here, out of both the Orlando and the Cape Coral VA where I was just at today, man, you just felt like they actually cared, And
yes.
So it was that. Obviously, there's things that they can only do so much of, but for the most part, you feel like they're, it's not a bureaucracy anymore. It's actually they're there to help people.
Yeah.
And so that's good. And that whole VA scandal from way back when, a couple of years ago, 2015, where the veterans were dying. I think that was the mark where they changed things around. And you hear about the negative stories from way back when, but you don't really hear about them anymore.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. It was crazy, first hearing about that stuff, on the news and, just seeing just how badly it was being run. It was sad. And, but no, they're definitely doing a lot more now. And, my father's just had, just from my personal experience of what I've seen through my dad, he's had kind of complications. They tried to take his disability away or reduce it, and then he's been going through 10 years of claims for his disability, but I think now he's finally getting some actual money from that back.
That's good. Yeah, I think it's way back when it was they were categorizing people based on their financial needs. If you were a case where you're going to cost X amount of dollars, they put you in a file here, and and if you were less than that, they put you on a file here, and they saw those people, and they put those people off to the side because it was a high, heavy burden. And, now the military has changed drastically because, for one part, we were talking about before, when I was in, if you said the wrong thing to somebody, it was you were getting smoked. You were doing 1 million push-ups, you were running 10 miles.
Yeah.
And now they've lean back a little bit on the heavy exercise, and now it's paperwork.
Yeah.
You say something wrong, somebody get written up, and now they're people are saying oh, the military's changed, it's getting softer. Well, they also have all these disabled veterans who were just had some guy with an ego telling them to do 1 million push-ups just for no reason, and injuries come out of that.
Yeah.
So everything all in one. I think the VA is kind of implementing their changes, and they're making it phenomenal.
Definitely. So how did you come down to FGCU?
So I told you I was working in golf for a while,
right,
in Orlando.
Okay.
And some work, and my work ended up over there, and I ended up just coming down here because a couple job opportunities opened up, and then I heard about the PGM program, and I still had some GI Bill time, and I reached out to the school, and I was like, hey, I'm interested, and I'll go through the GI Bill, and yeah, they were like, yeah, so we just kind of became a wrap from there. I never had any intention of going to FGCU, but I live in Fort Myers, and yeah, it was just like,
just pretty easy.
Yeah,
it was right there, so why not?
Yeah, well, I heard about it, and it was like a year later. I finally got to go. I finally just said, screw it, let me just go, and then, I actually used most of my GI Bill time at another golf school in Orlando when I was there, but they actually shut down. So what happened was they lost their Title IX funding, so their accreditation pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically had a useless associate's degree, and so the VA gave me my school time back to go back to school, and so now I'm going through like an accredited university now, not just some rinky-dink place. So it's a little more official, and I'm totally like, going back to school again. It's like, oh geez, man, let this be over. But I'm super excited. I have an 11-year-old son too.
Oh, very nice.
And so kind of like what you were talking about with your dad and your brother, it's like the same thing. I'm like going home and like I'm doing homework and I see him not doing homework. No.
Yeah.
I'm doing homework. You're doing homework too.
Yeah.
And so I think it's from my angle, it's like nice to kind of be more a role model for him. Like I think just if he sees me doing school, maybe it'll just entice him to do.
100%. Yeah.
Because it's like even with kids, it's the same thing as veteran. Like you feel like you're the only one. Like because if you're a kid, you're the only one going to school. The parents aren't going to school, so you feel like they don't know what it's like. So if I'm going to school with him, then he sees more of that motion there and wants to maybe want to do more of it.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Give me just 1 second.
Yeah.
Camera, stop.
Oh, you're good. It's warm in here.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like sweating.
Yeah, we're about to wrap it up. Okay. Okay. So yes, to finish wrapping this up, just want to ask. So, what do you think is one thing either institutions or the community as a whole can do better for veterans?
I don't really know, to be honest with you. I think, to be honest with you, this is my personal opinion. It's no one's real like, just because I served. I volunteered. I wasn't forced to do that. So to kind of expect other companies to do certain things in benefit of me is a little unfair, in my opinion. I think that we all make our own decisions and we do everything ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's great to have, I'm going to school and FGCU, Student Veteran Association, is helping me out. So stuff like that, yes. For the community, it's for the most part, the ones that I know, like, don't really expect much, and they don't want anything, and no one wants to be treated like differently.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's just, for the most part, I really don't think there's anything that anyone needs to do. If you're dedicated to helping veterans, then help veterans. If you're, if you see a lot of the companies do it for publicity. And you see
instead of really for the cause.
And social media, is a huge thing now. Oh, we're doing this, for veterans, but for the most part, in my opinion, I don't think anyone needs to do anything. I think just kind of do your thing. If you're going to support veterans, if you're going to support, whoever, the police, if you're going to support whoever, just do it because you want to do it.
Yeah.
I do notice that, some veterans, it's very helpful. There's a lot of programs out there, so I really think that we're in a good spot right now. And
Definitely.
so, and there are, some. Yeah.
Everyone's different.
Yeah.
Everyone's different.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that anyone else needs to do right now. I think everything's in a good spot, to be honest with you.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good way to end the interview.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no worries, bud. Thanks for having me.
All right.
All right.
It's a wrap.
Yep.